You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 47, Offer Hope with Kathyrn Taylor. Meet Kathyrn Taylor, the author of a fabulous memoir called 2-1, where she tells her brave girl story of sudden abandonment by her second husband. Kathryn has so much wisdom to share with the world, and I'm glad our paths have crossed. She's a retired teacher that resides outside of Charleston, South Carolina, where she can read, take in the beach vibe, and they find themselves in a similar situation. She took her pain, set her intentions for her recovery, and then grabbed her journal to produce the best-selling memoir that you can read today. She shares how her dear friend in Atlanta was there for her during her darkest hours and days as she grieved. We talk about the title of the book and how it came to be, as well as her entire experience publishing her story, working with a publishing house. I had the honor and privilege of meeting Kathryn in person when I was in the Charleston area a few months ago. I'm sure that you will agree that Kathryn is a true gem and joy to be around. I love her energy and how she picked herself up and reemerged on the other side, a much stronger person with a new perspective about life. I also hope that you're enjoying all of my podcast episodes and learning how other brave girls are navigating life and continuing to have faith that this too shall pass, just like Kathryn did. I've got some big things planned in the coming weeks to celebrate my 1-year anniversary as a female podcaster. I'll share what I've learned since deciding to travel this road by making a commitment to you, my tribe of brave girls. I'm humbled and honored that the show has become global in nature and is now inspiring women to become the best version of themselves, and why I believe that the world needs more women in leadership. Whether you've listened to one episode or all of them, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am so grateful for you, my tribe of brave girls. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Tonight, I have Kathyrn Taylor with us, and she's the author of 2-1, a memoir. Welcome to the show, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so great to have you here. So I know that at one point you were from the Chicago area, but now you're down in the Charleston, South Carolina area. And I believe you were a teacher. So tell us a little bit about Kathryn and how you got to where you are as a memoirist.
I retired from my teaching career 10 years ago to relocate to Charleston. At the time, I was living in Richmond, Virginia, so I've moved. This actually is my 16th move.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving. So I retired to come down with my spouse, who was starting a project, and then the spouse decided that he didn't want to be married anymore. So I have always journaled, and I wrote a book.
Wow.
I had to help myself. There were no answers, so I kind of journeyed through the darkness.
Right. And you decided to stay. You decided to stay in Charleston, even though you had relocated there with him.
I did. I had, well, first of all, I was fortunate that I could not have to make an abrupt decision. And because it was 16 moves, I wasn't anxious to do it again. So I stayed, and I think as difficult and painful as that was, and I write about this in my book, I'm not sure if I had gone back to Virginia, where my children were and my network was, I'm not sure I would have sunk quite as low, felt the depth of the pain, and pulled myself out of it like I did. I think that when there is a safety net, you oftentimes don't have to experience the full depth of loss. And I certainly had to experience it because I was totally alone.
Right. Without a network, without like, it wasn't like you were working, so you had like a work family or a work environment. You were, there, exposed all by yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Totally raw.
Yeah. Now, were you an English teacher or were you a different kind of teacher?
Interestingly, I was a first grade teacher.
Okay.
My background my undergraduate is in elementary education. My graduate work, my graduate degree is in curriculum and instruction.
Mm-hmm.
I have no MFA. I have no minor even in English. I could write a really good report card comment. But again, I think that that's part of my story also. I think that the opportunity to recreate oneself at any time, or to follow a dormant dream at any time, it can be done.
Wow. So now, when you were journaling, at what point did you realize that you had the makings of a book?
I had a friend that I had taught with, a colleague and friend that I had taught with for many years, and there is a lot of communication as a classroom teacher to parents.
Yes.
and administration and things like that, and it comes easy to me. I'm fairly articulate, and verbally and in the written form, and she had always suggested that I write. However, I was a single working mom, and I didn't have a lot of extra time to write.
Right.
But several months after my loss, she called and asked if I had been writing yet, and that she suggested that now would be a perfect time. And
Mm-hmm.
she was right, because not only was I searching for answers, but when you write memoir, you don't have to research memoir.
Right. You were firsthand experience.
Exactly. And I was writing it. I think what I've learned that makes my book very distinct from other books is I was actually writing it in real time. This book is not, well, it is something that happened 5 years ago, but it was being written 5 years ago while it was happening.
Right. Now, what was the significance of 2-1? I mean, I know he left, but was it in your mind, you thought, okay, well, I'm moving to South Carolina and this is where we're going to retire and we're going to have this life together. And then all of a sudden it was like, he's not there. And you were just like, wow. And it just came to you like, this is a story that needs to be told because it's happened to other people, or it was really your way to express the grief that you were going through?
The title itself is not the original title.
Wow.
The original title was When the Other Shoe Drops, or He's Really Not in It for Life. And the reason for that was, as you can imagine, that was what he had told me repeatedly over years of friendship and courtship and marriage. And so when he left, and I was journaling and I started putting it into book format, that was the catalyst. That title was, But You Promised, You Swore, You Had Me Sell My House, You had me retire long before I was ready to retire, You had me relocate. And that was what was driving the writing. But my publisher would not publish under that title. She assured me that that was cliche, and cliche does not sell books. And if I really wanted to share my message and help other people, I needed a different title. So my editor, Annie Tucker, she came up with some choices, and this is the one that we agreed with.
So you, before we got on the show, you were telling me that you have quotes throughout your book. And so as you were writing these chapters, did you seek out quotes that sort of summarized it, or were they like quotes that you really felt like capsulated like the key messages that you were trying to get through? Like, talk us through a little bit about the book.
The book begins, each chapter begins with a quote, and the initial epigraph is from Jennifer Pate Gilbert, who you might recognize her name because aside from writing an excellent book called I Never Promised You a Goodie Bag about a personal attack and loss and rebuilding, she also started the company Save the Date. And I read her book almost immediately when I relocated, and I was very touched personally by her story and by her insights into grieving in America and how we don't do it well here, we don't tolerate it well. And the quote that I really clung to, and I clung to quotes throughout my ordeal and my healing, because in one line you could grasp it and hold on to it for a minute or a day. But Jennifer's was, you can't control what will happen to you in life, but you can control who you will be after it happens.
That's a good quote.
And it drove me because the callousness of my loss and the delivery of the termination of my marriage was so hurtful. And I didn't want to be angry, and I didn't want to be bitter. And so I clung to that quote. And she, as were all the authors who I quoted, were very generous and supportive in allowing me to use their quotes in my book.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so I kind of want to go back even further to something you said earlier, that you were a single working mom. So you had been married before and he passed away, I think?
No, he did not.
No.
It was a divorce. It was a volatile relationship. In a volatile divorce, and I never intended to do it again. I never did. When that marriage ended, my sole goal was to model for my two young daughters that they were always unconditionally loved, and that life was full of opportunities and experiences, and for them not to be afraid to grasp those opportunities and experiences, that we didn't have to have financial success or recognition or anything, but it was an adventure. Go for it.
You sound a lot like my mom. My mom's definitely that way. Very much tried to model for me and my sister, to just go for it. It's an adventure. take advantage of opportunities, all of that. And so good for you. Good for you. Now, I think the other thing I read in your bio was that you like the beach and that you have a dog. So that's a good place for you to be as you're, as an author and as healing and as a retiree. I mean, be with your dog on the beach. I mean, that all sounds really good to me.
Well, especially the weather you're having.
Yes.
The terrible winter. But I do. I love the beach. It's definitely my happy place. And as you know, where I live in the Charleston area, I'm surrounded by, within minutes of every beautiful beach in South Carolina. The furthest I have to go is Hilton Head, which is 2 hours away, or Myrtle Beach, which is 2 hours away. And I do those for long weekends or a beach week, but every other beach is 40 minutes or less from where I live. So it's like being in the Magic Kingdom.
Right, forever. So as you've been kind of going on tour, because the other thing I didn't realize was that your book just came out at the end of 2018, and now it's the sales are going well, and you're being asked to sit on stages and panels and share your story of your memoir and things like that. How do you feel it's helping other women that may have been going through this situation, or what kind of feedback are you getting from people that are reading your book? Because I'm sure it's got to be cathartic for you, but then also your healing is helping other women feel like they're not so alone.
I feel really honored at the feedback that I'm getting, and the reviews and the emails. It was a very painful process, not only writing my book, but more than that, editing was excruciating, because if a listener doesn't know what editing is like, it is word by word and line by line, and I was constantly reliving that pain.
Yes.
But having made the decision to publish, once the editing was over and the publisher was proofing and putting it into layout, I had gone over it so many times.
Yes.
I kind of equate it with childbirth and pregnancy. It's like you go to the doctor so many times by the end of a pregnancy, and then you're in labor and delivery, and there's so many people that are looking in you and at you and about you, that once it was out and I started talking about it, and the more I talked about it, the less painful it became, the more space I had between it and my current experience. And the more I realized that I had a gift to offer. And what I offer in the book is hope, courage, and confidence. And again, I think that we as women, we operate in an individual sphere far too often. You know, we're kind of tribal by nature, but we don't vent our innermost feelings. This book is raw. It's all right there. And for people, I got an email this morning from a follow-up from an event I did in Richmond, Virginia last week. And the woman had said that she purchased 2 more copies as inspiration for her friends going through that is a huge honor. That is just a huge honor that people
Yes.
believe that I am helping other women, and
Yes.
I'm very proud that it is reaching other people.
Sure. I love what you said about the fact that you're offering hope, courage, and confidence, because I'm sure while you were going through it, you probably didn't have hope, courage, or confidence as you were going through it. And that you had to really dig deep and go inward and really, go through those stages of grief, especially like you said, this was, a promise that got broken. And I love that you stayed focused on who you will be after it happens, because you didn't want to be angry and you didn't want to be bitter. And, here you are on the other side, and you're offering hope, courage, and confidence, and people are buying multiple copies. And even though you had to allow yourself to be vulnerable, and it was a painful process to go through. And I do know the editing process, especially because sometimes editors will make you really, really go deep into the scene of, what did it smell like? What was the weather look like? And they really make you go deep into those descriptions, and you do have to relive it over and over again. But I think that it's amazing that you had the courage to go forward with the publishing process, because this could have just remained your journal that you kept in your bedroom and by your nightstand.
This was actually 13 journals.
Right.
And when I started scribbling, and I started at the beach, ironically,
Mm-hmm.
and he left in April, and I started in July, and it was the 4th of July weekend, and I have used quotes and enjoyed quotes always, but I came up with the chapter titles, the preface, the prologue, and I had my quotes lined up. Little did I know that I would need permission to use those quotes, but that came further along in the process. But there was a small group of people who were really following my healing and my journey. And when I finished my book, I shared with 5 people who knew the details my draft, my quote manuscript. And I received the same message in different or varying terms from all 5 of those people, suggesting that it had a broader reach than just me. I was happy that it was finished. My story was over. I put it to rest.
Right.
And I was done. And they suggested that it could reach and positively impact other people if I was strong enough to publish. Well, as we've already determined, I have no background in writing or publishing. And I naively thought, well, heck yeah, that's got to be easier than writing. Well,
it's difficult. It's very difficult.
It is very difficult. So, and then when you're writing nonfiction, it's even a more difficult process because the requirements are more in-depth and more stringent. So I started researching again and learning how one goes about this process, and learned that you certainly need to know your audience, you certainly need to know your genre, and then you better match your audience and your genre to your publisher. And since I did not have a platform, I was not a celebrity, I was a total unknown, it was my first book, I knew I wasn't going to just call Simon
Right.
and Schuster and expect
Right.
that they were going to pick up my book. So I submitted to 6 small publishers, and I had 2 that showed interest in my book.
That's good.
I
That's a pretty good percent.
return, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So then I researched both of those
Mm-hmm.
publishers, and I say that, you know, very, very loosely because, again, what did I know about researching? What I did was I dug into what was available about the publishers. I
Mm-hmm.
ordered copies of several of their books in different genres. I
Right.
wanted to see what kind of authors they were putting out, what kind of product they were putting out. And I happily hitched my horse to Brooke Warner and her hybrid She Writes Press. And I have had so much support and
That's great. Well, it's like finding it's like it's almost like match dating or whatever. Like, I mean, you're getting into a relationship with the publisher, and so it's got to be a good fit from your side and their side. So just because they like you doesn't, I mean, this is a relationship, it's a business partnership.
yes,
And it's strategic, and so it's got to be a good match on both sides, and especially with you being a first time out of the gate author. That's good that you did all that due diligence. And it sounds like now you're netting the results and the fruits of that labor of building that rapport and that relationship with their platform.
and they offer so much support
Mm-hmm.
to authors, whether it's your first time or your 5th or 6th, because they have lots of people who have written several books and who
Mm-hmm.
have name recognition and things.
Right.
But it's just a wonderful network and resource.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. Do you think your book is a good book for like book clubs? If women have book clubs that they belong to, would this be a good book for a book club to read? And is there like a discussion guide or anything that you have
There is.
for it?
I
Uh-huh.
do think it is. I've been to several book clubs
Mhm.
already. I had one last night again, and I do have discussion questions on my website.
Mhm.
I did not put them in my book. Personally, I don't like to.
Mhm.
I just don't like to read a book that provides that. I like to
More
think
like
on
free
my
flow.
own
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and and be free flow. And so what I do when I go to book clubs, um, whether I'm in person or Skyping, is ask how the club wants to move forward. Do they want to ask me questions? Do they want to know about the process? Do they want to know, you know, however they want to present or
Mhm.
frame their discussion is how I do it. And I just had a ball at the book clubs.
Oh,
I
that's
love it.
great. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. Yeah, that's great. So, is there a particular story in the like sub story within the memoir that you're particularly proud of how it turned out after you wrote it and edited it and everything? Is there? I mean, I'm not sure how many chapters are in the book, and is there one that you're like, wow, I really nailed it with that chapter?
There there are a dozen chapters,
Hmm.
and there are a couple that I think are probably more motivating or
Hmm.
inspirational. Um, I know you have family here, and you may be actually familiar with this road, but I I call it the Plantation Road. It's
Hmm.
called,
Hmm.
so you know,
I know. Hmm.
Ashley River Road. So
Hmm.
on on a day that was a particularly difficult day, I my husband had come to collect his things,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't come to collect them. He came to remove what I had collected and prepared for him. And it was a very, very, very difficult day. And I'm not terribly proud of how my meltdown after he left, but I did call and spoke with my best friend who's in Atlanta, and spoke with her most of the afternoon and into the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I was drinking wine with her and sobbing, and I finally had calmed down and hung up the phone, and I said, I need to go to bed. I have a car appointment in the morning. And so I did, and my car appointment was at 9, and I woke up and it was already 8, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's no way. And we had been having flooding rains, which we sometimes do here. And I backed out of the garage, and I am driving to this appointment. And I don't want to give the whole chapter away, but let's just suffice it to say, this road has, as many roads in Charleston do not, has no shoulder,
Right.
has no lights,
Right.
is inhabited by wild boar and deer and gators, and I suddenly had headlights coming at me and right behind me, and it was pouring rain, and my right rear tire slipped off the road.
Oh no.
And instantly, and I am not a faith-based person. I'm very spiritual. I know that there are miracles and there are angels. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
And instantly, I said, don't let me overcorrect. I don't want to die. And miraculously, I was eased back safely on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a turning point. That was a turning point because it wasn't that I ever wanted to die. I just never thought that I could continue to move forward. And after that, I knew I was going forward. I knew that I felt like I was a Carrie Underwood song, right?
Yeah, totally.
Jesus, take the wheel. You
know? Totally.
And the fact that I did not.
Yep.
I was not injured. I was perfectly safe. I thought, I can handle this. There's help out there.
That's great. Great. So my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today?
I think the bravest thing I've ever done is submitting this book to a publisher. I just had no idea of the consequences of that little step. I had, again, I'm a first-time author, and I thought, well, they're putting a cover on it. They're making it pretty. If one or two people read it, and it helps them, that is wonderful. But it is so big to publish a book and to do everything that is required to publish a book and market a book.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
It is not, and I wish you had told me that at the beginning when they were saying, oh, yeah, if you're strong enough. And, you know, again, going back to pregnancy and childbirth, I think if we really understood the process, we would have a smaller population.
Right.
It
Well, and especially the type of book that you wrote, because a memoir that was so, I don't know that was so tragic, but it's almost like the heroine's journey that you bounced back and you said, this is who I'm going to be after it happens. You really allowed yourself to be vulnerable, and, you know, to publish that kind of book takes a particular level of courage and bravery. So I'm glad you did it, because it is going to help people. I think it is going to offer hope, courage, and confidence to so many people that maybe have gone through it and haven't completely gotten to the other side, or people that maybe are just now, you know, finding themselves in that particular situation. And so what's the best way, if somebody wants to get their hands on the book, where would they get that?
You can get it in all of your typical places. It's at Barnes and Noble, it's at Amazon. You can get it online. You can get it's in a great many independent bookstores in the Southeast and the Midwest.
Okay.
You can check my website,
which
Kathyrn,
is
KathrynTaylorBooks.com, and all of the links and all of the information is there.
Okay, and I'll put that in the show notes. I type show notes up with the show note when I post this, so that people can immediately go to those links. So I'll make sure I put them in there as well, so people can get them right from the podcast as well.
Thank you.
So, Kathryn, I'm just so thrilled that our worlds collided and that we were able to do this interview, and that your story's out there, and you're just such a gem. And I'm just so thrilled that you did take that brave step, because you are offering so much to the world. And I hope to meet you when I come to Charleston someday.
I am looking forward to it. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M, and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.